If you're ready to unlock more better days, to take control of your health, to push past your limits and unleash your full potential, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Dr. Jeremy Bettle. For over 2 decades, I've worked with elite athletes and high performers, helping them optimize their bodies, strengthen their minds, and recover from setbacks. Now I'm bringing that expertise to you through the Vitality Collective podcast. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the science, strategies, and real-world solutions you can apply right away. Whether it's enhancing your physical performance, avoiding or recovering from injury, sharpening your mental edge, or simply feeling your best every single day. With insights from top experts and thought leaders, this podcast is designed to help you take action, feel better, and live the life that you deserve. Welcome to the Vitality Collective podcast, where every day is vital. Today I'm joined by Troy Taylor, the performance director at Tonal. In this episode, we talk about the fascinating intersection of professional sport and the health of the general population. We cover the importance of clear goal setting, how to navigate the overwhelming wave of fitness data, and the power of technology to drive consistent behavior change. If you're someone who's been struggling to cut through the noise and build lasting habits, this conversation's for you. Let's get into it. Welcome back, everybody. Today, it is my pleasure to welcome Troy Taylor, who is the performance director with Tonal. And he and I go way back to our days in Toronto when we were both performance directors in elite sport. Troy was with the Canadian Institute of Sport. I was with the Maple Leafs, and we got connected through our obvious similar paths and have stayed in touch ever since. And today, Troy, I'm so excited to talk to you about this intersection of pro sport, general population, technology, and data, and everything that comes with it. So welcome to the show, mate.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah, likewise. So Troy, I want to jump right in with that intersection. You and I have made the same leap by and large. We've come out, we've had the similar trajectory within elite sport. We've managed teams of professionals who help take care of athletes. And now we're out here in the general population. And you and I were just talking off camera, and Michelle and I have had this conversation a bunch about an article that I read from Fit Insider recently that indicated that with this wellness boom that we're seeing, millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars going into wellness, both from investment, but also from consumers. And it's not translating into positive health outcomes. So the first thing I'd like to dig into is some of the lessons that you've brought with you from elite sport and brought into the general population world. And what are some of the similarities you've seen?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot more similarities than there are differences, particularly now, I think, with the access to data and kind of where I think wellness is somewhat heading. I think the number one lesson, I think, from elite sport that, constantly see that is not so well applied to general population is knowing what the goal is and having laser focus on what the goal is. US ski and snowboard, previous kind of thing, best in the world. We want to win medals. We want to win championships. There's, very, very clear outcomes that we are searching for, which helps alignment, right? It helps filter the noise. Get less distracted. It can still happen in sport, but it's much, much easier to refocus on, you've got athletes in terms of what they're focused on, in terms of the short-term goals. I need to, if I'm a developmental athlete, I need to make it into the pro ranks, or I need to get onto the national team or to the Olympic Games. And then, athletes that are, competing to win medals and, one star and kind of thing. But there's really clear goals. And I don't think the average population generally thinks about their health and lifestyle with that same kind of focus. And I can understand why. It's a bit more abstract, right? But I think that's something that we can apply from elite sport very quickly to the average population, is help them centering on what are you trying to achieve? What kind of life do you want now? The way I think about it with average population is where am I at today? And kind of things. Where do I want to be in, let's say, 6 to 12 months? Relatively short term enough that it can kind of focus and change my training and what I'm doing today. And where do I want to be? I'm 47 now, I think. Like, yeah, pushing 50 is scary. But like, where do I want to be in 10 to 20 years? You know, a Tia's centenarian decathlon. But like, I kind of like that 10 to 20 year frame. Like, the last 10 years of my life is too abstract for me. But when I'm close to 60 or over 60, what do I want to be able to do? Right. And like kind of focus with that kind of lens of like, I'm here, I want to be here in 6 to 12 months, and I want to be here in 10 to 20 years, and kind of think about it like that kind of lens that kind of can shape my short-term training and my long-term training, which is in Olympic sport, that's like, annual plan, quadrennial or 2 quadrennial plan. And so applying that takes a ton, I think, to kind of focus people.
I absolutely love that you bring that up. That's Michelle and I hammer this over and over again is what is the goal you're training for? And I see very similar to you, the similarities in pro athletes and general population being way, way more than the differences. And we run across a lot people seeing themselves as different to a pro. But for me, it's the overwhelming similarity is you are training for a goal that is going to place a demand on your body. The output is what's different, right? The human system is the same. How we prepare your body for that demand is the same. It might just look a little different when LeBron jumps in the air versus when I jump in the air. That's the difference.
No, exactly. It's about like reverse engineering, right? It's starting with the end in mind, Stephen Covey type kind of stuff of like, what do you want to be able to achieve? And then, working your way back from there. That means that, where I am starting point, I need to do X, Y, or Z today. I need to be able to kind of progress forward. So I'd say, I think starting with the end in mind is certainly there, and sort of having clearer goals. And then I think with general population, like related to that, we get distracted a lot with the noise that, is in and around the wellness kind of space right now. Yeah. And I think elite athletes also struggle with that. I'm sure you've seen that with pro athletes. I certainly saw that with Olympic 100%. Athletes. It's even amplified in elite sport that you've got people that have financial interests in getting this athlete to do this new and novel technique, this outside of the box. And, you're constantly as a performance director trying to kind of shape it. You don't want to be, if you say, no, that's wrong, then you're just going to push them out. So you try to be a bit inclusive, but how do you balance it? But I see that with average population now, right? An influencer posts this hack, this, shortcut, this thing. And you're like, oh, I should completely change my training. I should do something. And it's like, no, probably not. Like, let's not be completely blinkers on. Like, we can have some understanding, but like, if you're like preserving your health and that's all we're really focused on, do you really need to be worried about concurrent training or like the late? Probably not. And so I see that similarity, that the challenges that we had as performance directors in elite sport and the challenge that you as an individual now have to navigate all that on your own, right? You don't have this team of specialists. You don't have you are the performance director.
Exactly.
And so you have to play that filter.
Right. And that's one of the points I wanted to really discuss today. When we see the influx of technology, and I think we were probably on the very front edge of that wave where we were actually introducing a lot of the technology into these environments that we were in. And when you can have the budget for all of the technology, the discipline was, what don't you buy?
Yeah.
Right. And so we had teams of specialists, exercise physiologists, strength coaches. We had athletic trainers. We had physiotherapists or physical therapists. We had physicians, all the subspecialties of physicians, everybody utilizing a different individual stream of data, and all of that surrounding the athlete. And then guys like you and I sitting above that, integrating all of those disparate data streams into a cohesive plan. And so what I'm seeing is the proliferation now of that technology that was in sport coming out into the real world. Well, now the athlete who was having a lot of interventions designed for them is the consumer. And as you alluded to, they are now their performance director. Many instances, they're their own doctor, their own physical therapist, strength coach. And it's just this wave of data that is not leading to positive behavioral change.
Yeah, it's really tough, right? I think if I look back on my career, I probably was too quick to adopt some technologies at some, particularly early in my leadership career, go back 10, 15 years ago. You're like, I got attracted by the shiny, it's new, or I can do a underwater treadmill or an Ultra G or an I put an altitude chamber in Toronto and kind of thing. You're like, at some point of it's like, well, if I don't buy it now, they're never going to give me the money again. So I might as well get it. But in hindsight, it was, we probably over invested. And I see that across technology or across consumers now with technology is trying to chase these sort of, just because it's what they're seeing. And so that leads to, you get a lot of data and you get a lot of information, and I think you can't be a passive participant in your fitness journey in the 2025. I think you have to play an active role in that. Otherwise the data will start making decisions for you. And nothing wrong with any of these, but your Whoop score says you're like crappy, or your Aura ring says you didn't sleep well, and you're like, well, I feel pretty good. Well, go do it. Like, don't.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think there's a lot of these things where we have to be active in there. We have to be able to evaluate the data. And I have a kind of a framework that like helps me try to think through whether this is something that I should action or not, or at least the process of that. And I come to like, I try to, obviously given my background and your background, but the basis of like just thinking like a scientist, like asking better questions of yourself and of your data, of like, basically like, having some understanding of what the research says, of how to read. If someone posts something that this is the latest and greatest, like you do not need to be able to read the entire, research study and statistics, but understand if it's like human or petri dish or rodent data. Understand if it's like an acute effect or a chronic effect. Understand the difference between like a relative or an absolute change. Like really basic things, like 100% change are like huge. 1% to 2%. That's 100%.
Right, that's 100%.
Yeah. Like just like those simple filters, I think you can get 95% of your noise if you just have some understanding of a scientific process. Like, it's common and cliche right now to do your own research, right? Well, I think you have to be able to, and I agree with that. I think there shouldn't be blind appeals to authority. Just because I say something or you say something, I don't think you should accept it as fact, because quite frankly, it's impossible to tell the difference between a quality practitioner and just an influencer there. So you have to take agency yourself to be able to understand some of that data.
Yeah, I absolutely think that's definitely the case. That's why we wanted to create this podcast as a forum for cutting through the noise, because it is so difficult, because we will see influencers come on who are MDs or PhDs and hold very reputable positions and have been named on research papers, and you hear what they're saying and you're like, ooh, hang on. That sounded a little bit too, this is the only answer. This is the only way to do it, right? You're a little too sure about the outcomes here. And, people who haven't necessarily coached outcomes, if you've been in a lab and you saw this happen with your 20 participants who were probably hungover students, but I think that is such a valid point. It's hard to decipher from the individual and their qualifications who's trying to sell you something and who's actually trying to solve a problem for you.
Yeah, it's really tough, and it's becoming tougher. And like, Charlie Munger, it's like, you show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. Unfortunately, if you're in this space and you don't have the highest level of moral kind of, fortitude and kind of, you just want to do good work, all the incentives are for you to say something sensationalist, that you have the answer, that almost it's the more confident you are in an outcome, probably the less likely it should be believed in many ways.
Right.
And so but all the incentives, you could have actually been a really good coach, and you still are a really good practitioner. It's just every incentive is telling you to, I do more of a sensational story. I have more of the secret. I get more views, I get more clicks, I get more sponsorship. So I think we just have to accept that bias exists and understand
Right.
how to operate in it. And it's like,
Right.
think something elite athletes are really good, or elite sport organizations are like, this is the confines of the environment, right? The NBA bubble, you got how do I survive and things. I spent 200 days a year on the road traveling the world with,
Yeah.
like, how do you survive? I can't change this environment. So how do I thrive in this environment?
Exactly. Yeah, I often describe pro sport as being the best bad way of doing everything. Right? You think you're going to be in these perfect facilities all the time, and next thing you know, you're in Winnipeg in a hallway with a bag of rubber bands, right? Like that's pro
it's not
sport.
always as glamorous as it seems.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. Yeah, and similarly, like the framework that we ended up developing, because I did the same. You see the shiny new bit of technology come out, and you think, wow, like this is evidence-based. Research has shown that this gives an improvement in the athlete. This is going to really put us over the edge. But you forget the magnitude of that improvement may be, like you said, a 1% to 2% change. And we've still got the 99% change to make down here. And so I think, when we started evaluating really rigorously our technology, the guidepost for me was, is this going to change the behavior of the coach, the athlete, or the manager?
Yeah.
Right? If we're not going to create a change that impacts the athlete and how they perform, we shouldn't be collecting the data, because it's just going to sit on somebody's laptop. And that's how we made our decisions. And we had to keep the goal in mind of how is this going to improve the athlete's direction towards the goal.
Yeah.
And in many instances, we found the technology to be wanting.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. I think we did the same and on the other side of that, what's the cost of doing it? Not just there's a financial cost, but often in elite sport, that's not a huge piece. But what's the time resource cost of doing it?
Yes.
How do I have to hire a staff member? Is this additional kind of things that I need to interpret and kind of around that? And also just like, what's the cost of potentially the side effects or the downside of, an athlete knowing this or of us knowing this and kind of things. So like there's this kind of trade-offs that we have to be able to kind of make when integrating, whether it's technology or data, knowing what the potential upsides are and whether they help me reach my goal. And often I think, that might be found wanting. And also, what's the trade-off and side effect of doing this? Sometimes it's relatively minor and relatively small. Sometimes it can be larger. And that's going to be really individual dependent, right? Some athletes are going to want to know their heart rate variability on game day. And if they're poor, they're going to want to maybe implement more strategies because that gives them more confidence in I can turn this around and I can go at it. Others, that's going to completely psych them out and they're not going to want to know that data at that particular point. Exactly. It is what it is, like kind of thing. So you have to understand how you and your particular, disposition or physiology is going to kind of respond to that.
I think that is such a valuable point, because as we've come out and started coaching individuals who are gathering all of this data, and you get people who are very data oriented, high achievers tend to be, very objective. They want data. They want to know that it's working. And we've seen over and over again, and I have examples from sport as well, where the data is really paralyzing people. And that's where I'm starting to sort of bucket technologies now into data collectors and aggregators, and then bits of technology that actually create behavior change. Mm-hmm. They create a training stimulus or a way that you can improve your health outcomes. This bucket of data collectors and aggregators, I think, is where the most downside starts coming in. More data isn't necessarily better. I saw this in the NBA when we started tracking sleep, exactly to your point. And we used a company that actually gave you a readiness score in real time on your watch. You press the button, you're at a 72, right? Maybe you're at a 98, right? And that's when you're just at your peak. Well, when you wear that watch on a back-to-back in the NBA and you've just flown from New York to New Orleans, you played at 8 o'clock one night, you're playing at 7 o'clock the next night, you're on about 5 to 6 hours of sleep. Guess what your score's going to be?
You're not optimal, that's for sure.
Right. But you've got guys who that's been their career. They've always felt like that on that back-to-back.
Yeah.
But now I'm telling you, you feel bad.
Yeah.
To your earlier point. Now I'm telling you, you should be at a 95 to perform at your peak. You're at a 72.
Yeah.
And so there's tremendous downside in people's psychology. They can talk themselves into bad performance and into not feeling optimal because we just told them they weren't.
Yeah, you get this self-actualization kind of piece that happens in a negative side. And I think it's, like, I'm certainly not anti-data. And I think data's there, but you have to be able to contextualize it, right? You have to be, if you want to be able to utilize it to its best ability, you need to know its strengths and its limitations. Like, I'd say a lot of this data is actually really noisy and it's not as clear as we think it is. It's, it might be quite good for a number of hours in bed, but probably not great for like sleep stages.
Exactly.
Heart rate variability, when I started doing it, I used to have a time and frequency component, but the frequency seems to have been dropped off because we can't do that via PPG.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have to do that via an actual ECG, which has its own issues that you don't sleep with it anywhere near as well. It's just, so you got to understand that it's a guide and it can be useful in the right situations, but you've also got to understand the sort of the downsides and how your interpretation of that data may have negative side effects. Or train and educate yourself that be okay with, hey, it says I'm a 75, but I feel great and I'm going to go out and I'm going to crush it. And there are some people that can do that. Like I have numerous athletes and individuals that like, it's a data point, but I know I went out and, I can shoot or do my best game, even when I'm not on my top of my performance. It's actually a sleep study, I think, from one of the Olympic Games by the German team. And like the average sleep for like Olympic medalists was something like 4 hours a night before their Olympic Games. They still won medals, right? I'm not saying it's optimal, but we can perform for short periods of time under high stress environments and kind of still go out and do what we need to. Now, I'm not saying you should be striving for that every night. You shouldn't be trying to play a game in New York and then, New Orleans as an average population. We do want to sleep well.
Yeah.
But we've got to understand to contextualize the data and understand its relative strengths and weaknesses before just applying it blindly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the great point you've raised there is sort of the short-term impact versus the larger context. For me, as I looked at that guy's 72 on his watch, what that meant to me was, interesting. You can perform on one night under basically any circumstances, right? Your adrenaline will get up. We'll give you some caffeine. We'll put some short-term interventions around that performance. Fine. Long term, interesting, that's a 72. Next year when we make this trip, we won't get up in the morning for shoot around.
Yeah.
We won't have a meeting until 3 p.m. We'll let the guys, we'll give them a sleep opportunity. Yeah. We can change how we fly, how we sleep, we can put a bigger context and a longer term view around our data to allow it to be systemic behavior change versus, oh my God, I've screwed up. I can't train today.
I think everyone thinks about the immediacy of the data and how I can action it today. And I think what elite sport, like the best of elite sport does is pull the lens back, right? And look at that from a longer term perspective. We have a similar kind of story where we're doing altitude camps, right? So cross country skiers, Jesse Diggins kicking around like Olympic medalists. And what we kind of think is we used to have this standard protocol, right? We go to altitude camp, like, it's going to take you a few days to adjust. So we kind of, go out, get lots of sunlight, you're jet lagged as well. So we kind of had this protocol that was 3 days, and then after 3 days, we start ramping it up in the intensity and we start getting into full training because we're only there for 21 days, so it's kind of expensive. So you're trading off, right? How quickly can I get the most amount of work to get my hemoglobin mass? What we started finding with tracking is that actually there's some people that's respiration rate comes down after 48 hours and they can actually push earlier, and some athletes that were coming 5 days and they were still adapting. They're coming from the same base altitude, but coming up. And so now I can tailor it. It's like, this athlete can 48 hours, we can push some intensity, we can get some more kind of quality. This athlete, we're going to have to play it a bit slower. Do we extend the camp for them so they get a little longer on the back end? But it allows us to make these kind of adaptations that individualize it without throwing out, oh, that's really bad or that's really good. It's like, how do I modify what I'm doing to make the environment I'm in fit and work?
Right, to create the outcome. Yeah. And I think that this, again, this is a lesson that we need to take out into the real world as we proliferate data into the general population. I saw it from step counts where people like wouldn't go to bed until they'd like made up their last 1,000 steps of the day, like pacing around the bedroom. We've had people collecting nutrition information on the app that tells you, and if they've missed their protein target for that day or their fat target, they're finding high fat foods to make their fat target or to make their protein target. And I think the same is true, that we can get paralyzed. We need to zoom out and realize that, it's not that moment that you need that protein. Zoom out to how much protein have you eaten in the week? Right? Over long periods of time, have you provided these nutrients to your body? The body doesn't respond that quick, right? So use this as a guide to gradually change and shape your behaviors in a positive direction. And one of the things, I mean, we all get this, right? You forget your heart rate monitor for your workout, or you forget to hit start on your watch. And you think, well, there's no point. I'm not going to get credit for it.
Exactly. It's just useless throughout that session. My heart doesn't know that I did 150 beats for an hour.
How would it?
Yeah. And that's where data can be really powerfully positive, right?
Yeah.
It can change behaviors. It can give this motivations. We have people on our platform with multiple year streaks, and sometimes it does. It is. And hey, I'm on vacation. I wasn't a thing. Everyone can take a break. This isn't a thing.
Yes.
But they get in a 15-minute like on the go workout because they want to keep their streak in. Like, it's a small thing. It's not a big thing. But so data can be these really positive AMPAMs, but they can also be paralysis if we get kind of too hung up on these small kind of things.
Yeah. And that's the direction I'd like to start taking this now. That's sort of the cautionary tale of this data that's coming out. But we used it every day with our athletes, right? It's not that we don't believe in this. It's so powerful in that context. And that sort of brings me to this second bucket of technologies that's so critical, I think. How Tonal and others have created technological advances that actually create a training stimulus. The solution, you can see it on the wall behind you there. It's a magnificent piece of technology that doesn't take up any space, allows you all the resistance that you need, and has great programming. And so I just think that it's important that you have technology that combines data with action. And I think that ours is a strength-based longevity program, who, by the way, are not sponsored by Tonal. I just like the technology and recommend it. Yeah, we'll talk after, Troy. So I think that's the thing for me, right? I want something that's going to advance how I monitor my training, but actually train me, right? Actually allow me to get the stimulus I need to avoid frailty, which will change my trajectory long term. So how have you brought those lessons from pro sport into this role that you're doing now and tried to integrate that into the technology? Yeah.
Number one, I was super fortunate that it was an awesome product before I joined. I've been at the company 4 or 5 years. The product's been around 7. And so Ali, the founder, had done an incredible job. And I quite frankly, never really saw myself working in a gen pop fitness kind of home technology. It was, elite sport and kind of there. And I figured I'd transition at some point, but I didn't think it would be into home fitness necessarily. Yeah. But I actually got one for Michaela Schifrin in the lockdown of COVID. And I'm like, this is actually, I've spent $70,000, $80,000 on pieces of equipment that aren't as good as this. This is pretty incredible. And kind of, so it really became like I'm there. I think number one, I think you knocked it on the head when you talk about the concept of both training and monitoring together, right?
Yeah.
We have this ability we're closed loop. We get to prescribe. You can prescribe your own training, or a trainer can put things, but you get some input. We get to work out, have resistance, do training sets, reps, exercises. We get to monitor those all real time, and then we get to adapt and change the input again. And we get this full cycle, which I think is really special. And that allows, people to kind of really get invested in the technology. It's not just monitoring what I'm doing, but it's actually adapting to what I'm doing. And so I think the first piece that I focus on is honestly just getting people to work out consistently.
Yeah.
I think that's actually the biggest. I love the product. I think it's got some amazing bells and whistles, and certainly some I'd be happy to talk around how we optimize certain types of. But number one, it's a consistency maker. It's in your home. If you go back to James Clear, Atomic Habits or Power of Habit, like cue action reward type kind of stuff. It's in your home. You see it. It's super easy, right? The reason it's designed to look not like a home gym, like something you put in your garage, because if it's in your garage, you're less likely to use it. If it's in your home, if it's behind me when I work out, makes doing an exercise snack, a quick set, really, really easy to do. It integrates into my life in terms of doing that. And so we see that. And then we try and reinforce that with, I'm a big fan of sort of self-determination theory and sort of building autonomy, and this idea of having sort of autonomy. So I get to choose what I can do. So there's lots of variety that you can kind of have ownership. You want us to prescribe a program? Awesome, we can do that. You want Jeremy to prescribe a program remotely for you? You can do that. You want to do it yourself and write your own custom? You can do that. And so you have this ability to match, and we can suggest where you go with it, but kind of there. And that builds kind of, your own kind of autonomy. Competency becomes super important. So how do we teach people to be confident in their strength training? I think that's been a real hard one for strength training, particularly out of personal training. Or we've all walked around gyms and you're like, oh, that's not... I don't think you should be doing that right now. That's interesting technique. And so put a lot of time in, there's a big screen TV, we have form feedback, we have smart views, and we put a lot of time into help making you feel like you're good at this and you can become good at this. And then connectedness, or relatedness, this idea of a community. We just did a live workout on Saturday. It's things like 400 members on it, and everyone's posting on Facebook community and kind of things. And we found that people who follow on our app, if you follow 10 or more friends, you're almost 20% more consistent than if you follow no one. And whether that's causality or correlation or even reverse causation is up to debate. I'm not trying to say, but this idea of that. So we try and build that into the product, trying to kind of think around how we do kind of that to try and make you use it. If the reality is, for most of us, and I class myself included here, what I need to do for strength training to be longevity, it's not rocket science, and it's not a ton. Most of the benefits could become from 2 times a week, 30-minute sessions. You can do more, and I do more, and I'm not encouraging you not to do more. But if all you care about is preserving independence, building relative strength stability, you can get that from not a lot. So the X's and O's and the super detailed, minute stuff of how I worry about programming for an elite athlete or not, it's not that important. It's kind of the cherries on top or the icing on the cake. It's not the meat. And so I kind of focus a lot on just getting consistency, because what do athletes do? They train really, really consistently over time.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean they're doing the same thing or they're not having down weeks, because they're a lot more human than I think most people realize. But, Erickson's 10,000 hours, it takes a lot of practice. Whether it's a rule or things, most of my athletes have done lots more than 10,000 hours. So we're talking at 20 and 30,000 hours. But it's just doing consistently over a long period of time. So how do we build consistency into our product?
True. One of the things you mentioned there, exercise snacks. And I really want to touch on that point. Explain that to our listeners and explain the effectiveness. And I'll follow it with an example of how we use those with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, I'm an absolute huge fan of it, and it did come originally from elite sports. So, one of the sports I worked in, alpine skiing, you're on the road 250 days a year. Not me, but the athletes and the coaches and kind of there. You're basically in a different city every 2 to 3 nights around a different country often. So you're flying, you're driving. Like training time is really, really pressured during the season. But we know we don't get everything we need from skiing. So we had to find ways that we build in, hey, we need a bit of stimulus. I need a bit of high end kind of things. And so we started playing around with, hey, we're going to do like 2 30-second intervals with a couple of minute things on a bike real hard. And that's going to be your high end anaerobic work for the day because we're not going to get a chance to do anything else. And we started playing around with a ton of just fitting in these micro workouts, 1 to 5 minutes. And then this was before I knew, there's a ton of research that actually shows this is really quite an effective strategy for general population, for improving VO2 max, for improving strength. If you do a couple of sets up and down the stairs between a meeting. My tonal is here because I will do sets of mostly bicep curls, but something after Zoom calls, after podcasts, I get in 1 to 2 sets, do a warm-up set, top set, and then I'm done. And really, really kind of powerful. And so it came out of elite sport because we were time pressed. Everyone thinks you have all the time in the world and you actually have really, really limited time windows. And so we started building in these exercise snacks. And now I probably train 7 times a day for less than 5 minutes a time.
Yeah.
I just find these little periods of time. And I think there's more research coming out now that this like frequent, small bouts of exercise is probably better health wise than say, 12 hours of sitting on one hour workout. So yeah.
Yeah. I just love that. That's exactly the problem that we faced in the NHL. We think pro athlete means 24/7. They're a pro athlete. What it actually means is the CBA only allows them to be in the building for 4 hours a day. And we're going to have to eat, change, treat, lift, actually practice, watch film,
do the sport,
get feedback, recover, right? And so everything you have to do, if you want to add something new, what's it replacing? Yeah. And so our lifts were 15 to 20 minutes, but we did it every day.
Yeah.
And it was micro dosed. We would get some plyometric work in, we would get some strength work in, we'd get some stability work in, and then they were into the meeting with the coach. The meetings with the coach were 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Right? Precisely. So that was it for us as well. Like you would think walking into an NHL building that you'd see this amazing like 90-minute lift session, really prescribed, really like heavily coached. It was, all right, get in, guys, stretch. Here's the circuit. Let's go.
Yeah. You can go a long way with like minimum dose training with relatively small amounts of training. I'm not saying all the time that's how you're going to become to an NHL player. Yeah. It may be a decent strategy for longevity for most people if that's what works with your life. But certainly, even if you're not doing it all the time, there's times when you can do that. And like the maintenance research and what we've experienced, you can do that for a fair penny and continue not just to maintain, but make small amounts of progress, maybe not optimal progress, but great return on your investment in time, just doing these small targeted amounts of work. And I think what elite sport does is there's preseason times where we might do more bolts of work, right? What's important now, right? Okay, well, at certain stages of the season, I get to invest. I get to over-invest in these certain physiological properties or technical, tactical properties where I can really focus and I'm really working on optimizing or really building that property. And there's other times when, hey, we're in the middle of the playoffs. Lifting is important to maintain some strength, but it's not the most important thing. So however we get that in is what we get at that particular time. I think sport does that really quite well when it's working optimally. And that's hard for general population to realize, right? You can have these ebbs and flows, these ups and downs, these focus periods of time where you're, really working hard. And there's other times when life and stress gets in the way. You've got busy job, family, whatever it might be. Put your training on minimum dose for a couple of weeks. That's much better than the all or nothing, right? I'm on it and everything's perfect and I'm dialed and I'm completely off it, which is what probably more often happens.
Yeah, and that perfection paralysis, right? I mean, it's something I really struggle with, right? Knowing what the workout could look like and looking at the schedule and being like, wow, I don't have an hour to go to the gym today.
Yeah.
There's an easy default to not do it if you don't have that block. And what this for me, what the snack allows for me is consistency,
Yeah.
right? You'll get your hour workout in relatively consistently, but if you look at your schedule like, oof, it's not happening today, do something,
Yeah.
right? It will keep you in the habit. It will be great for your metabolic health, like glucose uptake, all of this sort of stuff is enhanced, by this little snack. And just do that throughout the day. Don't worry about it having to be perfect. Just move.
Yeah. Yeah. We used to in elite sport, and now I use this in my own training. Plan A, plan B. Every week
Yeah.
we'd have a plan A and a plan B. And plan A is like, this is how we want it to work. And, quite often in elite sport, we could for periods of time. Plan B, minimum dose. Like, what is if shit hits the fan and everything's going to go wrong and the flight's delayed and we can't get the rental cars and, someone gets, maybe a little sniffles, not whole ear, but not feeling. What's the minimum we need to do? And every single thing, there's a ton of research around flexible goals and how, they're actually having, schedules and structure is good, but making it too rigid is not good. And so this idea of flexible. And so that was our way of being flexible. Plan A, awesome. Everything goes to think. Plan B, no problem. We got it. We're set. And it's pretty small. It's, it's 10, 15 minutes a day. It's not heavy.
Give us an
training.
example of what that might look like, Troy.
So in my own training or for an elite athlete?
Either one.
Okay. In my own training, my plan A is mostly I try to aim for 4 lifts a week, upper, lower, which will be split into exercise snacks, each of those. So I lift on 4 days a week, but I don't, it's a set. Upper might be 4 different sessions in that particular day. Generally, I start with strength and then I build into more hypertrophy. So I start in like lower rep ranges, get some maximal strength, and then kind of work out. And then I try to do, a 30-minute walk every day. And I try to do 1 high intensity session a week. That's my like plan A in terms of that. And so in total, it's about 6 hours of training. If you kind of break it out and kind of where it looks. My plan B is I will try to lift twice a week for 15 minutes. That's it. I will do like intensification techniques. I use more supersets, more drop sets. I'll try and like same amount of training, but in shorter periods of time, just to kind of get some stimulus. I'll try and do my high intensity interval session. Will probably get scrapped most of the time when I don't do that. But I'll still try and at least get some movement. I'll try and hit my 10,000-ish steps and kind of there. But I won't do any dedicated cardio if I don't have the time for it. And so that's my like plan B. It's my minimum dose of like, I'm still getting cardiovascular from the steps. It's not optimal. It's not ideal. I'm still getting like 2 strength sessions a week, even though they're only 15 minutes. I'm still hitting whole body. So I'm sort of at least maintaining. It's like 3 to 6 sets per muscle group. It's not a ton. It's pretty small. And that's about it. And then, hopefully next week won't be so busy. And it is what it is. That's life.
But you've kept things moving forward.
Exactly.
It's the important
got something.
thing. Yeah. And that's what I've found with our training as well. Like compressing it from a more traditional, do a set, sit there, wait 5 minutes because I got to hit my max, that sort of training for me doesn't fit the lifestyle. It doesn't fit having a job, being a high performer, all this sort of thing. So that circuit style, we'll often do a complex of 4 exercises. And, we'll go through that 3 times and we can get through it in 10, 15 minutes. Yeah. But we get the strength benefits, we get some jumping in, we get some stability, we get some core work. And because it's continuous, we get a little cardiovascular impact from it.
Yeah.
Right. Heart rate stays high. And all this messaging around perfection right now, the protocols, you've got to do 8 hours of zone 2 training a week, like 8 just of zone 2. And I've got to lift 3 to 4 times a week. And I've got to do high intensity intervals. And I've got to eat right and get my sleep and stare at the sun for, an hour in the morning.
It's a lot. I don't know who's actually doing this outside of like, I can certainly tell you the elite athletes I worked with, the vast majority are not doing anywhere near, like they're training a lot. Don't get me wrong, but they're not doing these, like, all these, it seems like we've mistaken the meat and the potatoes, or the main, what we should be focused on, and the auxiliaries. And now we've got all these protocols based off a sort of mechanistic understanding of how this will impact my cortisol, or this will impact my testosterone, or this. But we have longitudinal outcome research that says this does not matter. And if it does matter, it matters very much in the margins. So yeah, like lift, do some cardiovascular, do some high intensity, definitely. Try and get in some base aerobic stuff if you have the time to. Work on stability and balance. I try to do a bilateral exercise and a unilateral exercise a day, or when I do a lower body. That's it. That's my high end, elite sport tactic of, I try to squat or deadlift with 2 feet, and then I'll try and do a single leg version of it to work on some balance. And I try and move relatively quickly to work on my power. And I think the research would say, and certainly my experience, that's where you're going to get the vast majority of your gains. If you want to optimize, cool. I'm not against it. Like, I definitely, if you are all in and you focus, but even then, the focus still needs to be on optimizing the main parts of your training, not all these necessary auxiliary extras.
Exactly. You're joining a legion of world-leading experts who have been on this podcast, and not one of them has come on and been like, you know what, this one supplement will really put you over the edge. You know what'll really get your cortisol in line is if you just look at the sun in the morning, right? Like,
if you check out my Instagram shop page, I'm joking.
Funnily enough, here's the product that I'm selling to achieve this.
Discounted, especially for you.
Yeah. Troy Taylor 20 in the coupon code. We had Dr. Mike Joyner, who's one of the most prolific researchers in VO2 max training, and I said, okay, well, how much should I be doing? And what he did was read me his running haiku. He said, run a lot of miles, some of them very, very fast, rest once in a while. That was his recommendation for the listeners. It's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. It's great.
I think, the more that you know and the more you spend around this space, the more that you just come back to the fundamentals, and doing something and doing it regularly and doing it consistently and kind of doing that. And then, we can do some advanced techniques. Like you did a bunch of really stuff in NHL and NBA and others. I've done some cool stuff kind of things, but that's for the 1 to 5 percenters who have already got everything else dialed. And I think we just mismatched the information that people are, I'm just getting started. I'm just trying to improve my health. I'm trying to stay independent. I'm trying to stay healthy. And we've essentially made it confusing for them by adding all this extra. I can't do, strength and aerobic training in the same session, or it would hurt my gains, or if I don't have protein within such and such a timing window. Some of this doesn't matter anymore as we get more research. And even when it does matter, it matters very little, but we've not, the information that we're giving is almost like, to relate it back to sport, the last 3 months of Michaela Schifrin or Lindsey Vaughn's Olympic cycle, it's pretty dialed. We're really focusing on some pretty small things because they are really, really good athletes with very, very close to their optimal ceiling. And so we're trying to find, we'll do some what would seem advanced techniques to try and help them gain those small competitive advantages. But 99% of what they did is fundamental training for very long periods of time. And that's where we've got that mismatch wrong, unfortunately.
And that's exactly it for me. And even in those pro sport environments where we did some really cool, really high end, fancy looking stuff, it was still 1 to 5% of the program, right? In those moments, right? It was consistency in the fundamentals with that stuff added on a little bit of the time that was helpful, right? We could do a conditioning session and have them go sit in the sauna for 20 minutes after. Yes, we could. Would we notice if they missed it? No. Right? Like, it's fine. You'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's literally, it's about building, right? It's not about replacing that stuff. It's about
Yeah.
adding to it on kind of things, or it's less like, you've got to have that fundamental stuff before these things are going to make any difference. And whether they're
Yeah.
noticeable or not, I don't know. Our job was to play in the margins a little bit. Like I used to do a presentation that has like a roulette table, and like my job was to be the house. I couldn't guarantee victories, but like if I put the odds 51-49, I've done my job. That was the kind
Yeah.
of piece. But
Yeah.
like that level of attention to detail is not needed by most people. And
Yeah.
when it is needed or valuable, it's really once you've got a lot of the other things in place.
Yeah. You've done a great job by that point.
Yeah.
You mentioned something earlier that I think I'd love for our listeners to hear from you. And so as you've gathered this training at scale, you're gathering data from lots of people now. And you had alluded to how we get people to use the equipment. What are some ways that people can think about building their consistency? You mentioned if they were friends with 10 people on the app, how would you apply some of that into somebody's day-to-day training where they could build these habits and be driven by that data?
Yeah. So we're about, I think it's over 250 billion pounds lifted, by hundreds of thousands of users. All of that, I think it's
Wow.
10 billion reps at 50 hertz, just to give you kind of the scale. It's pretty mind blowing. I
That's
used
just
to,
your training, right?
yeah, just me. I used to play around a little in Excel and write some R scripts occasionally. I'm like, I'm not qualified to work with our data. We have a data science team to do with that. So it's huge. And you're talking 18 to 80 plus year olds. It's every walk of life, from complete beginners never lifted through to more advanced strength trainers and people, who have been doing this a whole life. So it's a really good cross-sectional kind of look at humanity. So, I'd say, what are some of the things that people can do? Like, start with like theory of planned behavior, but some of it's like, making sure that you believe you can do this, that this is important and you can do it. That's a really strong kind of piece. So we kind of try to build that into the platform that like give you confidence that you can do this and that you're going to be fine. And there's lots of people like you that are already doing this. Social proofing, right, becomes really important. We kind of need to believe that, like, it's why, the people that you hang out have such a big impact, whether it's your family or your friends, or an impact on what you do in life. So that's why athlete cliques work really well, because you believe that people like you can do this. And that's really, really powerful.
Yeah.
And so we try to do that within our community, within our app. We're trying to build you kind of there. Once you're doing it, like you're setting up, we're talking about like behavioral economics or behavioral design, reducing friction. Becomes a really important one. So that's, how it looks. So you see it every time, right? You sometimes hear about people that put a pull-up bar above the bathroom door, and every time they go to the bathroom, they got to do a pull-up. Or it's kind of simple like that. You keep seeing it. You've invested. It's not cheap. So you're like, oh, I really should use that kind of thing. So you kind of reduce friction by, I said, we kind of work on autonomy and we have people that sort of get to choose, but we can also take away cognitive like when you get too much decision, we can just recommend something. We give you the autonomy to choose whether you want to do this yourself or you want us to do it. And for lots of people, they choose, I don't want to think about this. I want to do the work. I want Troy and hopefully his expert programmers to program it for me. So I kind of take away I think. So there's this idea of behavioral design. And then there's ideas of habit formation and how do we build habit. And so, we know that we can do programs or one-off workouts. People who do programs, about 20% more consistent than people that choose one-off workouts.
Right.
Again, there might be some reverse causation or correlation, not causation there. But the idea that like, hey, it's planned out. I know what I'm going to do. I'm signing. There's a commitment device, right? If I sign up to this. And then share that on the app, share that in social media, get that social proofing of I'm communicating that I am doing this program. So, you can quit at any time, but there's this cognitive dissonance that happens where you're like, oh, well, I said I'd do it. I should. It's like the idea of like doing a charity run and posting it online. I got to do that marathon now. But this idea of like, we are social creatures. We kind of don't want to say something out loud and then not do it. And so, we kind of programs. We certainly find that we try to nudge people with the app and what time they're working out, if they normally work out at such and such a time, and it's, 5 minutes past, can I send them a push-up message, a push notification? Hey,
Right.
You're normally working out at this particular time. Like, hey, we noticed we're missing you. Sometimes like life happened, meeting kids, whatever. It's not like being annoying, but it's like, oh yeah, what happened to me is like, I'll do it. I'm just going to do this email and then I'll work out in 5 minutes. And then half an hour later, you're like still writing the 12th email or something. So we can use technology to nudge us into those things. And then that idea of streaks and badges, they're not, in my mind, they're not the best long-term engagers, but they're great for building habit formation, right? You get to see, like on Tonal, you get to see how many pounds you've lifted every single session, but over your lifetime. That becomes a really powerful motivator for tracking progress, right? I've lifted 8.5 million pounds on Tonal. Yeah, that's pretty good. It gives you this progress tracking of kind of there, or ways that we can bring in the sort of the data, kind of keep you motivated. We do find that people that check their stats are also about 10 to 15% more consistent. So, but finding the right time, checking your stats, being cognitively engaged, those kind of things help reinforce this. And essentially we're trying to build that identity, right? This identity that I am someone that works out. And I think about that. I'm not exercising. That is who I am. And if we get people to that point, you're going to do it. I can take all of that away and you're still going to do it. Yeah. But it takes a lot of steps along the way, for some people and for many people to get to that point of someone that I am an exerciser. I am someone that exercises. This is important to me. So we try and build in each of the ways. And like every good physiologist, you end up talking more about psychology these days, about like how do we get people to motivate, but like try to build that into the system itself.
Yeah, I think that's critical. Even with these pro athletes, we put a ton of thought into behavioral design, the nudge theories, behavioral economics. How did we design the facility to have the system happen to the athlete? Because those athletes aren't exercise science students or nutrition majors. They like playing their sport. So they didn't want to do all this stuff. And I think that's such an important piece of this is the transient nature of I'm an exerciser. Because that can drop away, the longer you slip. Now we've got to rebuild those habits. So I think the more we can maintain those little bits, the behavioral hacks, I think that's so valuable. And it's why we want to keep people doing the activities they love, the sports they love, because that's your social community. Yeah. Right? If you're playing pickleball and you've got a partner that you play with, you're not going to not show up. Yeah. And so our last podcast was really about training for the demands of the sport. And so if this is now tied to being a better pickleball player, or at least not getting hurt playing pickleball or tennis or paddle or whatever it is that you enjoy doing, I think that the social aspect of this is such an important driver for people's vitality and ultimately longevity.
Yeah. The more the specific you think the action helps lead to the outcome, you want, the more likely you are to do it, right? If I have a general belief that I know strength training is good for longevity, that's fine. But it's like, if I can squat, my body weight for 10 reps is going to help me stay robust to play pickleball, much stronger kind of connection, much more likely to do it. And one thing that I've realized, and I'm working on this in my own kind of health and fitness, is I'm really good when I'm home. Right. Yeah. Tonal's here. I got a home gym behind me. I've got Park City. I got trails I can go for walking. When I travel, I'm still pretty shoddy. I still struggle a little bit with consistency of training. I go to my plan B, kind of thing. So I'm trying to work on there. But like, I've got a lot of habits of traveling a lot with Olympic teams and with around the world. And honestly, I didn't take care of myself. Like that was not my focus in those. And so I've got all these I'm going to eat out at restaurants more. I'm probably going to have a glass of wine or two at dinner. I'm not going to have the best sleep. I'm going to like all of these. And so I'm trying to unwind 25 years of habits of that into, now when I travel, whether it's, for work or for family, I don't have to do those things anymore. And so I can rewind some of those bad habits out. And yeah, I can get out and I can do some lifting and I can do that. And so that's something I'm trying to work on in my own particular life, because I think your environment shapes a lot of those habits, right? A lot of those cues are, oh, I'm in the airport, I'll go to the lounge, I'll have a beer. Those are quite ingrained in my mind, and you've got to peel those back.
Yeah, and just see the opportunities for those snacks. Really easy to get some great steps in an airport.
Yeah.
Right. Great place. Mine was always, it's flipped. I was worse at home than I was on the road.
Oh.
Right. Because you put your bags down. All right. You get your strength coach. All right. Meet you downstairs. I'll meet you down in the hotel gym. We'll get our workout in. And so we were actually quite consistent with that.
Yeah.
I work on consistency at home. I feel a lot of inertia when I'm at home, and it really takes a strong program. We have to plan it. We have to put it in the schedule. It takes a strong plan B.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I get it. It's even people who know exactly what they should be doing and what the benefits are. Yeah. It's really difficult.
Yeah, knowledge is a gap for some people. It's not the gap for most people. It's implementation for sure.
Yeah. Well, Troy, look, we're coming up on an hour here, and we finish every episode with 3 takeaways that you want people to think about as they're setting out on their journey, or maybe they're recalibrating. What are the 3 things that you'd like people to take away today that they could implement in their life right away?
I think I'd probably start with that same first point that I had was around like just get clear on what you're training for. Look, what's important and what physiological properties will help underpin that. You want to be able to go hike, you want to be able to play with grandkids, you want kind of things. Like start with your end in mind and we'll reverse engineer from there. And that will help you cut through at least 50%, if not more than the total noise. I think that's kind of number one. And I think that's something Olympic athletes are particularly good at and professional athletes are particularly good at. I think number 2 would be probably around those idea of, I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't at least have some understanding of how to evaluate information. I think you have to be able to evaluate. I think while that might seem like a lot of work for some people, I don't think in this day and age you can just accept. You find trusted sources, find the Jeremy Bettles of the world, find the good people. But I would say it will behoove you to definitely kind of seek out being the basics of kind of how to understand information, particularly research-related information, because that's what seems to be getting passed around. And then I'd say thirdly, it's like, would be around like, I call it kind of refining like an engineer, but like working in Silicon Valley and kind of techs, right? The iPhone, while it was revolutionary in 2007, it didn't have copy and paste. The internet barely worked on 2G. The camera was pretty shitty. But over time, right, you make these improvements, right? You get feedback loops, you get information, you act on that information and kind of things. You're not responding to every single piece of information, but you're kind of evaluating it over time. I think that's something that people can do in their own fitness, is iterate like an engineer. Constantly you can make improvements. Where you are today doesn't need to be where you will be tomorrow. Doesn't mean that you should throw everything out. The iPhone still looks fairly much like the same iPhone, but inside it's been upgraded. And I think you can do the same with your own health and fitness. Right now, you might be in this idea of like preserving independence, right? I just need to get healthy and I need to get moving. I need to be able to go up the stairs without pain. Great. My 6 to 12 month goal is I want to be able to play. I want to be able to play pickleball or golf or whatever it might be. So over time, we can kind of iterate. Once we can get that, okay, I can walk up the stairs. Now I can add on a layer, add on a piece and kind of make this iterative process. That doesn't mean I throw everything out and then completely new program and switch. It means I add or replace something. It was a 30-minute high intensity, 4x10 session or 3x10 session or whatever it might be. And now I've added a couple of intervals to it, or I've increased the intensity. But I can iterate over time, I think is super important. Because I think some people, they've been doing the same program for the last 25 years. And there's nothing wrong with that if they've progressed overload somehow. But I think we can kind of probably help ourselves a little more. Like people, struggle. Why have I not progressed? I'm lifting the same or, running the same pace that I want. Well, if you're 70 and running the same pace as when you're 50, that is progress. But in many ways, we can kind of modify these and we can iterate over time. So I'd say that, like, start with the end in mind, like have a way to evaluate information and then iterate over time.
I love those points, and in particular the iterating. As we get more of these protocols being thrown at us, it's so easy to think everything I'm doing is wrong and I've got to remove all of that. And I've got to completely start over. Just not the case. We're constantly introducing new systems into our training, but it doesn't replace what we're doing. It adds to it, right? We might refine and add and like you said, iterate. But just because you hear a soundbite on social media, don't throw out your program and think you got to start again. Just keep iterating. If it's working for you and producing the results that you want to experience, maybe don't throw it out.
Yeah, if I was going to add a thought, like, don't let perfection get in the way of progress. Like,
yeah,
we could debate whether weighted vests are good or bad. I'd probably say they're not that much valuable. But certainly, just because it hasn't arrived from Amazon or you forgot it, or like, still do your workout. Just because you didn't get your pre-workout supplement in, still do your workout. Like, just because you had still do your workout. Like, I think we sometimes kind of create these ideas of it's not perfect. It's much like the sleep score, right? At the back, kind of there. If it's not perfect, it's not worth doing. And I think the research evidence, I think from elite sport, there's a lot of stuff that's worth doing, even if it's not perfect.
Yeah. And on the weight vest thing, you know, and on waiting for this perfect thing, understand your goal again.
Yeah.
Like, I wear a weighted pack to go on hikes and all this sort of thing, but it's for the cardiovascular load. It's not for my bone density.
Yeah, I know.
Right. So understand what it's doing for you. It's not that it's not good. It's that it's probably not doing what you think it's doing.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest bugbears with science and fitness communication, is taking something that might have some benefit and completely twisting it into some other area. And now it's like a universal hack for this. Yeah, I agree. Like, cardiovascularly, it'll increase the intensity. It'll get you maybe into zone 2 where your normal walk might have been in zone 1, or you can get in zone 4 or 5 if it's a steep hill. That's great. But yeah, bone mineral density, probably not. Muscle mass, maybe not. And that starts with the end in mind, right? Knowing what you're trying to achieve with this particular intervention.
Well, Troy, again, I want to respect your time. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been absolutely wonderful. Really appreciate you.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me on, Jeremy.
That was a powerful conversation with Troy Taylor. Here are the 3 actionable takeaways from today's episode. Number 1, be clear on your goals. Determine what you're training for, whether it's to hike or to play with your grandkids, and reverse engineer your training from there. Number 2, learn how to evaluate information. You don't need to be a research scientist, but understanding the basics of reading data can help you cut through the noise and avoid misinformation. Number 3, iterate like an engineer. Don't throw out your entire plan when you hear something new. Continuously make small improvements and add new layers to your training over time. If today's conversation resonated with you and you're ready to apply these concepts into your own life, that's exactly what we do at Vitality Collective. We bring together world-class diagnostics, personalized planning, and ongoing performance coaching to help you build a life of sustained vitality. Head over to www.vitality-collective.com or follow us on Instagram or LinkedIn at Vitality Collective Performance to learn more. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, rate it, write a review, or maybe even share it with somebody who you think could benefit. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.